Hey guys, it's Maymay, and today I'm going to talk to you about this tool that I made. I made this in a video, and I showed it in the video, but I didn't really spend any time talking about this particular tool. And I've had some people ask me some questions, and so I suggested to them that I would do a whole video, and they liked the idea, so I'm going to do a video. So here's what this is. This is actually a glitter catcher or embossing powder catcher, etc., that I got years ago from close to my heart. It has a hole on the end, and you're actually supposed to sprinkle stuff over it, and then you can put this right back into the bottle. It's got a little funnel in there. That's not really the point. The point for me is I never use it because I'm not a glitter user and I'm not an embossing powder user a lot. I'm getting more into embossing, but I don't use it a lot. But what I do use is ink and stamps. And a lot of times when I'm inking with my Misty tool or, something like this, where I'm doing a lot of repetitive work, and especially if I'm using an ink pad like this one, the way the cap is attached, here's what I find myself doing. So I have my little stamp over here, my paper over here. So I open this guy up like this and I ink it up. And then before I can go to stamp it, I have to do something with this. And typically I try to like sling it over like this or whatever. And every time I end up getting ink on myself in some way. So for the longest time, I was like, how can I do away with that? That's really bothering me. I always end up getting ink on my finger, and then inadvertently I pick this up and get ink on my project, especially with this ink pad. But I find it true with most ink pads anyway, because even if I'm using one like this and I open this up and I come over here and I ink it like this, and then I'm doing this number, and maybe I pick this guy up, look, there's ink on it. I just got it on my finger right there, and then that's going to transfer to my project. So there, what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention. That's exactly what this is, necessity and invention. So here's what I did, and I want you to be able to do this too. So I got to thinking, and I was like, rubber bands or rubber in and of itself does not absorb ink. And I thought if I could figure out a way to suspend the ink above something with a rubber band, then I wouldn't have ink being wasted. Like, for example, let's say you took your ink pad and instead of closing it every time, you sat it on a piece of paper like this in between you're using it. The problem is the ink from your pad is going to absorb into the paper you're sitting it on. So that wasn't a feasible way of doing it. But what was putting on something that wouldn't continuously absorb ink. That's why I chose rubber bands. The other reason I did is because I could make a platform out of them without having without using a whole sheet of anything. So I'm only taking ink from 3 small strips of the pad, which this will make more sense in a second. So what I did was I took my rubber bands, and to start with, I did them this way. Now, you will have noticed when we first started, I didn't have them this way, but this is how I started the first time I did it. I did it like this. Then I discovered that this little guy is longer this way. So I ran my rubber bands this way so I could do multiple ink pads. All right. So let me switch these around. So I just took that rubber band and I started at the top at that little spout. Now I'm using this little guy. This little tool is perfect for me. But in just a second, I'm going to show you something that I would suggest for you. And I want to show you how it works. And basically, you're setting these guys apart, almost like guitar strings, They're just kind of separated from each other. And I like for them to be nice and flat and not be spiraled or wrapped around. I want to flatten it out. The rubber bands I used are ones that are flat and not skinny little rubber bands because they hold better when they're flat like this. All right, so that's what I've done. I've created for myself this platform for my ink to sit on. So now what I can do, and I just sit this off to the side of my work surface, but for now I'm going to put it here. Now I open this one time, okay? I ink up my project, and then I just sit this on there. So instead of me having to worry about trying to close it in between, I just sit it on here and then I do my stamping. So for repetitive stamping, this guy is great, but it's also great for other kinds of stamping. Let me show you what I'm talking about and see how little ink gets there. Now over time, when I do the next one and sit it down, it's going to pick up more and it's going to pick up more. But even at that, I'm not wasting any ink, just a little bit. I'm not absorbing ink out of here onto the rubber bands because the rubber bands are not porous and they're not pulling the ink in. Does that make sense? I think it does. So this guy can then sit here and look, I can move it around. I'm not getting ink on myself. When I pick it up, I'm not touching it. Let me show you this. If you lay it this way on your work surface, you literally can put your fingers all the way down. Look how far down I went, and I'm not touching any ink because I can stick my fingers past that rubber band. I don't have to do that, but no matter what, I'm not getting ink on my fingers. I love this. I love it. All right, I want to show you how to use it for layering stamps. So this is a box that was given to me at Made It Con. And I'm pretty sure Donna Jo gave this to me. I think I'm right about that. But she gave me this box. And the lid looks like zebra because you know I love zebras. And the bottom is actually holding my stamp sets. And my stamp sets stick out so tall, I don't use these lids. I usually just put the box on the lid and leave it there. But I thought, nope, I'm going to use it to make one of these guys. So if you have a shoebox lid or a box top or just a little shallow box, this will work. So I'm going to create a bigger one for myself. So I'm using rubber bands again. I'm just going to wrap these around, and I'm just going to make myself like 2 sections of 3 rubber bands. Okay, so there's one. And I'm just finding where I want it to go and just wrapping these around. I bet some of you guys do not like rubber bands. I have a friend that has a phobia of balloons, like the rubber and the stretching, and that may be you. And if it is, you could try doing this with like dental floss or something that won't absorb ink. You don't want to use string because string will absorb ink. You want to use something that won't take ink out of your ink pad unnecessarily, if that makes sense. All right, so rubber band it. Rubber band it. That's funny. That's what I should call this guy. My rubber bandit. Well, that's what's going to be called now. Y'all know how I do things. So now it has a name. All right. So here's these 3. I'm going to do another one down here. Okay. So I've made for myself this side and this side. Listen to this. You can also play music. Just kidding. All right. So let's say Christmas is coming up and you have a whole bunch of cards you want to make and you want to do some layer stamping. If you have this guy sitting to the side, I'm going to sit it like this. And I'm going to use my wreath, my Insta Wreath stamp set to do a wreath. And I want to show you how using this can make it go so much faster and get a lot less ink on your fingers. So 3 colors of ink. I'm going to use Rainforest. And I'm taking the lid off and putting it aside. I'm not going to mess with the lid. I'm going to lay this guy on my little rubber bands. I'm using Acorn. Again, taking the lid off, moving it out of the way, lay this on my rubber bands. And then this one is Green Oasis. Moving my lid. Now, I technically can put this one here. See, I can get 3 along there. Perfectly fine. But since I made that bottom row, I can put them there as well. All right, so to do this, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with my first image, which is not that one. My first image is the pine. That's the one I like to start with. So I'm going to get this little guy, and I'm going to use the darkest green. So I'm going to pick it up, ink this guy up. Sorry if the table wiggles. I'm not used to that yet. I'm trying to get used to the table wiggling. Sit this over here. I don't have to put a lid on it. I don't have to get ink on my fingers. Nothing. Stamp this guy down. And then I can either continue with my next one, right? I can go right back to that same ink without having to open and close it. Or I can go to my next layer, which is this guy. So I'm just going to pick up my next layer. My next color is Green Oasis. So just ink this up, sit it right back on the rubber bands. I'm not getting ink on my fingers. And I'm not over the top, so I'm not going to be able to see this very good. I'm just going to stamp it. I'm just showing you for the technique anyway. So there's the second color. Again, I can keep going and do my repetitive work, or I can do one at a time. And then this is my pine cones. Okay, pick up my brown, not opening anything, not getting ink on my fingers. And then I can stamp my little pine cones in place. And I didn't get over the top, and I didn't put those exactly where they go, but you can see what I'm talking about. So how nice is that to not mess with lids and closing and etc. I love it. And you guys had asked me to do a full video on it, and I hope that explains it. I'll probably continue to just use this one because of the size. I think I'm going to add a little hanger to it and then hang it off to the side. And you've asked me how I clean it. I have a cloth I keep in my craft room that's one of those little microfiber non-lint cloths anyway. I just rub it over this and get the wet ink off, and it stains my rubber bands over time, but I don't care. It still works just fine, and I use it over and over again. It's great. I have enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I thought if you didn't see me use it in my last video, because that might not be a video you watch, this way you can see it. Let me know if you have ideas for this. Like, how would you use it? What's a way that you could see yourself maybe with layered stamping, or, you know, let me know. If you've made one since my last video, tell me how much you're loving it, because I love mine. I think it really changed my stamping game. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you again next time. Bye-bye.